Hey everyone, welcome everyone. So welcome to the second workshop of yuHacks Day 3 workshop week. I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope everyone's adjusting well to the in-person class lectures. So today I'm really excited to have invited over Saman Khan, a technical solution developer at Google, who happens to be a York University grad from CS in 2020. So without further ado, let's have Saman come over. How are you, Saman?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Good, thank you very much. Thanks for coming over.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's get started. Could we have a little bit of introduction about yourself and how your personal experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here as part of yuHacks. And my name is Saman. I am working currently at Google as a technical solutions developer. I did graduate from York University not too long ago, back in the summer of 2020. So just a couple of years, well, almost. And I'm really excited to be sharing this presentation with you today. It's called Exploring Careers in Computer Science. I do acknowledge, though, that not everyone here is probably majoring in computer science or software engineering. But I think that we're all united by one thing, and that's we're all interested in technology and want to learn about postgraduate opportunities. So I hope that the session is helpful for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions after.
Cool, thank you very much, Saman. And could you tell us a little bit about what the viewers watching now could expect after the workshop?
Yeah. So I kind of want to talk about it from the perspective of somebody who just graduated in the pandemic and then joined the workforce virtually. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a little bit of a better understanding of the types of roles that are available outside of computer science or roles that people with a computer science degree can leverage. And I hope that it will be a little bit different than what we usually have in mind, the traditional software engineering role.
Perfect. We can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. All right, the stage is yours, Saman. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for having me here. And I hope that the session is helpful. We'll be talking a little bit about exploring careers in computer science. And I did give a little bit of a brief introduction about myself, but I did graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science in the summer of 2020. And shortly after, I joined Google as a technical solutions developer. I am based in the Waterloo office because that is where our tech hub is, and just also because that is where the Google Cloud team is based, and I am part of the Google Cloud team. So I thought, like if we're going to be talking about careers in computer science, so why not share a little bit about what my career path looked like getting here. So it's nothing too fancy. I mean, in 2018, I started as a part-time research assistant at the Archives of Ontario. You may have seen it. It's that like blue building by York Lanes. It was a really it was a good job. It wasn't related to anything in computer science, but I made good friends, and it was a nice way to make money. While you're in school. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, and I did continue working part time just until I graduated. And then in the summer of 2019, I did a co-op at RBC. It was for the role of digital accessibility analyst, kind of a mouthful, but we just worked with people with disabilities. It was super, super eye opening. The things that I learned during that co op, I think, will stay with me forever. Learning about people with disabilities and how they interact with technology, and just going forward, how we as developers can implement certain practices in our code, in our UI, things like colors and the sizes of the buttons that we use. So these are all really small things that make a huge difference for people who have certain disabilities, whether it's audio, whether it's visual. And then in the summer of 2020, I finally graduated. I thought the day would never come. It was a long 5 years, but finally graduated with a Bachelor of Science. It was, I believe, the 90 credit one. It wasn't the honors or specialized one, but I did originally start in the software engineering program at York, and then I transferred over to computer science. And then, so that was in August of 2020, I graduated. And then just 2 weeks later, I started at Google as a technical solutions developer. Um, as you can see here, I didn't do any internship or co-op at any FANG companies or in Silicon Valley or anything like that. In fact, I only had one co-op under my belt and like one part-time job. So it just goes to show that I don't think you really need any type of fancy, out of country co-ops or internships to really land what you want. And I think the rest, like what's really important is that the rest I kind of filled in with projects and extracurricular activities. So I think that kind of helped shape my resume to be well-rounded. So I'm happy to answer any questions after the presentation as well, or you can drop questions in the chat and I can answer as we go. I just hope it's going to be a super casual conversation. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about what I do at Google. I know the role is not really a traditional role that somebody with a computer science degree would go into. And I promise it's not as complicated as it sounds. A technical solutions developer, TSD for short. We just develop solutions for our customers from a technical perspective. We work with top GCP customers. So to name a few, we have like Shopify, Twitter, Spotify, JP Morgan, just like companies that spend hundreds of millions of dollars to put their infrastructure on the cloud. So we kind of just work with them to make sure that their systems are running efficiently and securely. So for an example would be like, let's say Twitter is running into an access problem internally because let's say their firewalls like weren't set up correctly. So a TSD will kind of step in to work directly with the developers at Twitter, and we'll kind of work with them to resolve it as soon as possible. Handling outages, making sure that any impact is mitigated, and just providing support. Like we troubleshoot, we diagnose, and that's kind of where the coding aspect of the job comes. Our goal is to decrease the number of problems that arise with GCP products. So we do build tools to diagnose customer issues, and that's kind of like where the coding part of this job comes. And then with all that knowledge and everything that we've learned so far, we use that and we apply it to product teams that own those products. And then we kind of work with them to support their products, making sure that they're working as intended. So I am a TSD in the Google Cloud team, and we have 4 focus areas, and I am in the infrastructure focus area, which contains like Kubernetes, Compute Engine, DevOps, and security. These are the 4 areas that I am like trained to work in. And then of the 4, we get to specialize in one of them. So I chose security as my specialization. It was something that I've always been interested in, but I never really got the chance to pursue it. So I'm really grateful that I'm getting the opportunity to specialize. It's going to be a long road, but I'm really happy with where I am right now in security. So that's just a little bit about what a TSD does within Google. And there are very similar job roles, pretty much scattered across all cloud providers. So it might not be the same thing, but the day-to-day is pretty much the same. So like the role of a TSD obviously didn't exist probably 5 or 6 years ago. Cloud itself was probably like wasn't a big thing 10 years ago. Cloud just became massive over the past decade as companies transitioned over to the cloud. So, among that, there are a bunch of other jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, such as like, social media influencer. Those guys bring in like millions of dollars every year. We have podcast producers. Podcasts have become such a great opportunity or an avenue for education. A cloud architect, I didn't even know that was a thing. We've heard of architects buildings, but like cloud architect, they're creating something that's not even tangible. But I mean, that's highly in demand. Big data engineer, that didn't exist 10 years ago. If you told somebody like in the 90s that there is going to be a big data engineer, they're going to say like, what do you mean by big data? Like that concept didn't even exist 10 years ago. And then we have, other things like drone operators as hardware becomes more advanced. And it's not necessarily autonomous. We need people to operate drones, machinery, all this advanced hardware that's coming out. So it just kind of goes to show that there are so many jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, but pretty much all of them kind of have a computer science or a tech background to them. So it kind of like, as cheesy as it sounds, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. They say that you have to wait for the right opportunity to come. And I agree that, timing is sometimes really crucial to success, but you kind of need to realize like, when should I be patient and when should I kind of work to make things happen? And, if you keep waiting for the next really great thing to happen in your life, then you might just be waiting, for a while. So it's just kind of like, it's all about creating that right opportunity. Um, we can't always rely on chance, and we need to create the opportunities that will eventually lead us to our goals. And only you know what your goals are. So really, it's kind of like, as cheesy as it sounds, you kind of have to build the door that's going to get you into the industry. So I kind of want to build this image of a traditional programmer. Growing up, I mean, we've seen like that typical stereotypical person on TV, like that hacker, somebody like living in their mom's basement. They're just like on their computer all day. Um, we tend to think that the traditional programmer, they enjoy working alone. They want to just code all day, every day. They don't want to, or they don't feel the need to collaborate with the team. And we also think that traditional programmers, they have complete autonomy over what they get to create or design. However, I want you to just like take this image and throw it in the garbage, because we do not want this type of programmer. We don't want to be this programmer. We don't want to work with them. We don't want this type of person to be in our team. We want kind of this new age programmer, somebody who, it's okay to enjoy working alone, but you need to obviously know how to work with others, to collaborate. Um, it's unrealistic to be coding all day in any software engineering job. I don't think there's any job out there that requires you to code 40 hours a week. A lot of it is like planning and just like organizing, a lot of meetings. And, you have to work with a team. Collaborating is really crucial. And that kind of goes into having autonomy over what you create or design. Contrary to popular belief, pretty much the roadmap for all products are designed by the product manager, which is directly influenced by the users of that product. So if a user demands a feature to be implemented, like, you kind of have to do that, right? Because it's going to have a huge impact on the product's roadmap. So these are all things that we've kind of grew up to believe that programmers do, and it kind of throws certain people off from wanting to become a programmer or a developer or a software engineer. But I hope that everyone kind of is moving away from this image of a programmer and moving on to kind of what this new decade or what this new generation really needs. So I kind of want to go over some really interesting roles that exist within the cloud, because that is where I work. And I thought that it would be interesting to kind of share some roles. And these roles are pretty much prevalent in all cloud industries. So not just Google Cloud, but like in Amazon's AWS and Microsoft's Azure. I thought it would be interesting to kind of go over them. So the first one being a technical writer. I didn't even know this job existed, but it is somebody, it's basically a dedicated person who is in charge of drafting and writing documentation that is read by millions of people across the world. So when you are just Googling something like, how do I, spin up a VM, or how do I create a database, the technical writer is responsible for making that user guide. So obviously they have to be very creative, they have to have strong writing skills, but it's also really important for this person to know the ins and outs of the product that they're writing for. And they need to put themselves in the user's shoes, but also the developer's shoes. So they work really closely with the developers. And I think it's really cool how they get to, like, their words are being read by millions of people. There's also a really crucial role called the customer engineer. It's kind of like a consulting role with a heavy focus on coding. I always find this role to be super interesting because these people will, it's basically consulting on steroids. Like, they are working directly with companies and they're understanding what the company wants. If there's a bank that requires like high security clearance, that the customer engineers are going to be coding up solutions for these companies. And pretty much you can never have enough customer engineers. And although the name customer and is in the title, customer engineer, you also have a lot of say into the products and how customers are using those products as well. And then we have a role called Site Reliability Engineer, also known as SRE. This has become an increasingly in-demand and popular role pretty much across all companies. But an SRE makes sure that systems are running reliably and efficiently. They kind of like think of when, let's say, you push a change and like one line of code brings all the systems down. Like that happens. It's common. SREs will kind of step in, mitigate the impact. They'll make sure that any systems that are down can get back up really quickly. They conduct a lot of training, just so that when a moment like that comes, they can act really quickly and they know exactly what to do. So SREs really are the backbone of anything. Like imagine any website going down for even a minute. It's going to be a lot of, like they're going to be losing a lot of money. So SREs have a really big responsibility to make sure that everything is running correctly. And then we have a role called the Technical Account Manager. You can kind of think of this as the intersection between a business analyst and a software engineer. The Technical Account Manager, aka TAM, they act as a liaison between a company and the cloud provider that they chose. So the TAM has to understand the business requirements of this company from A to Z, and then they work with the cloud teams to implement those solutions. So in my eyes, these guys are the superheroes. They know everything there is to know about this company. They are so good at managing expectations. They have a strong technical background. They can step in to debug if needed. They can step in to work out finances if needed. And this person just kind of like, they wear a lot of hats, but I think it's also a very rewarding job. And then we have another role, data center technician. Maybe not as new, but like it's still definitely a role or basically a job that a lot of you may not have considered with the computer science degree. But this is somebody who works in a data center. They cross like 7 layers of security just to get to work every day, and they work hands-on with data center hardware. So if you are interested in, like disks and databases and anything hands-on, a data center technician will basically get you there. They know what to do when natural disasters hit, like when there's flooding or there's earthquakes. A data center technician is basically trained to kind of protect data and also act really quickly in case there's any emergency or anything like that. So these are all kind of examples of roles that maybe you may or may not have heard of before, but they are highly, highly in demand, especially in the cloud realm. And as we all know, cloud is becoming increasingly popular, and it's just going to become exponentially more in demand as we go on. And I know that you all are at like a very crucial time in your life where you're about to graduate, or you're kind of thinking about what I should do when I graduate. So definitely, please take a look into roles that are not your traditional software engineering, software developer roles. If that's what you want to do, then awesome. But there are a lot of things that you can kind of pick and choose and apply to other roles as well, like technical writer, customer engineer, SRE. So I really do urge everyone here to kind of research on different roles within cloud, finances, businesses, pretty much anything that you think would mix your own passions and your own interests with a computer science degree or a computer science background. And again, like as cheesy as it sounds, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Like I'm sure Abraham Lincoln knew what he was talking about when he said this. It's your future, and I know that it feels like you have a huge responsibility and like the weight of the world on your shoulders right now. You're graduating soon, and that first job you think might be really crucial for your future. But as important as it is, I think it's just we need to get our foot in the door and then just kind of see what we want to do, see what we like, see what we dislike. And the only way you can do that is when you start your first job. So don't feel pressured to get the dream job or the perfect job as soon as you graduate. I think it's really important for us to basically just like get our foot in the door as soon as you graduate, and then think about your interests, where your passions lie, and then steer yourself there. And what I mean by that is within your role, you can look for kind of like opportunities to pursue things that you are interested in. So let's say you're a software developer, but you've always wanted to go into UX or UI. So you can maybe talk to some UX UI people on your team, or you can reach out to the product manager and ask about certain design principles. And not only does that kind of help you build rapport with those people, but if you want to apply or if you want to transition to those certain roles, then they kind of have their eye on you and they already know that you have that interest. And again, anyone with a background in computer science or just anyone who knows how to code is already kind of like ahead of the game, because it is a skill that is extremely in demand, and it's kind of like the foundation, and then anything you build on top of it will just become even more amplified as you progress throughout your career. So I thought I'd take some time to also talk about some areas of focus that are kind of in demand, but things that you may have not really considered because maybe you think that, oh, like I'm too junior to pursue this, or I feel like I don't know enough about it. First and foremost, I know I've said cloud a lot during this presentation, but cloud is definitely the future. Pretty much everything is running online now. Anything to do with cloud infrastructure means that it's more secure, it's more flexible, it's more efficient, and you can pretty much take any skill you have and apply it towards a career in cloud. And the best thing is, like, although there are like the three big cloud companies right now, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, just knowing one of them will help you, or everything that you learn in one of them will be applicable to the other two. So you don't need to feel that you need to kind of know or do certifications in all three. Just knowing one is enough, and then applying that knowledge throughout is going to be super transitional. So roles I talked about 5 roles within cloud, and there are so many others that I didn't mention. So I definitely urge you to take maybe like a free course in cloud or do a certification in cloud, see if you like it. But I think at the very minimum, we should know how the cloud works, and in the future, you'll definitely be interacting with the cloud or cloud products in any way. Next up, we have AI ML. I'm sorry if you guys are tired of hearing about the importance of AI ML, but I'm not like really saying this from the lens of like robots or like self-driving cars. I think that AI ML is just simply, there's so much data in the world. Businesses are collecting that data and they want you to figure out how to produce insights. Like, they need to know what this data means. They're pretty good at collecting that data, but they don't really know what it means. And that is where an AI ML specialist will kind of come in and make sense of that data. And that's applicable to self-driving cars or robots or anything like that. But it can also just be helpful in like the restaurants, in hospitality and tourism. Again, with cloud as well, it's made AI ML really accessible. AI ML used to be this very esoteric kind of specialty, like not many people knew how to do it, or you had to be very advanced to do an AI ML. But I think now with like so many courses and all these podcasts and stuff, it's really interesting. And it's really easy to kind of like get your toes wet with AI ML as well. And then we had advertising. It might not be the first thing that you think of when you're, designing or planning your future, but advertising is huge, and computer scientists, software engineers are behind this. They're learning how consumers think, and businesses will pay top dollar for this type of specialty. And if you can somehow figure out a way to influence consumers' decision to buy certain things, then that I think is going to be a huge, huge benefit for companies. And I think the biggest example of this is Amazon. Their success, I think, is all due to just the way that they know what their customers need, when they need it, and just that whole process of supply chain, e-commerce, advertising. I think there is a lot of like untapped potential there. And again, it might not be something that you think traditionally with the computer science degree, but advertising is just going to increase as more businesses come into play. So definitely do not underestimate the importance of advertising. And then lastly, we have security. This should not come as a surprise to anyone. Security has always been at the forefront of most companies, hopefully. You're protecting businesses, you're protecting their systems, their data, their employees. You need to make sure that you understand the triangle, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. You're helping to create and promote a secure environment. You're advocating for best practices. These are all really important things that every developer, everyone in tech should know. Security is not something that should be left only for security engineers to focus on. It should be prevalent throughout all jobs. And you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think security is really something that everyone should just know the basics of. But if you do choose to specialize in security, just know that there is a huge, huge deficit in cybersecurity specialists right now. And I think the possibilities are endless because security can be applied everywhere, both in software and hardware as well. So after having said all of that, I'm sorry if it was a little bit overwhelming to hear all of that, but I really hope that it kind of gives you some perspective on careers, not just outside of computer science, but just in general in the world that we live in today, in this hybrid world where some things are virtual. And then, like even just school right now, it's pretty much a hybrid. I know you guys are back in person, but the past 1.5, 2 years have not been easy on anyone. So here's just a few things that I think that you can do right now, and these are things that I always suggest my peers, coworkers, my siblings. Like starting off with your resume, super important. It kind of helps you get your foot in the door in the recruiting process. I think my biggest advice would be to include your EECS or like your computer science assignments as projects. I remember I would spend like weeks on a project, and then as soon as I submitted it on Moodle, like it was gone, like I forgot about it. But I think that was a big mistake. Including those projects on your resume, I think will really, really help because we're busy. We don't have time to be doing side projects. So definitely do not underestimate the value that your EECS or your computer science assignments bring. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I know that there are a lot of really great EECS courses that we have, and pretty much all of them have some type of key assignment that you do. So definitely include that on your resume, highlight keywords, keep it concise, obviously actionable, but at the same time, like your resume doesn't have to be anything fancy and colorful. Stick to black and white. It allows you to add more information. And I think that is pretty much it. Like everything else will kind of depend on the interview. And then we have extracurriculars. I think that this was kind of like a turning point for me when I was in undergrad. I found a club that I was really passionate about. It was Women in Science and Engineering, WISE at York. I really found a lot of really amazing people in that club, and I used that as an opportunity to build my soft skills. But it wasn't intentional. Like it was just naturally when you're organizing hackathons or you're organizing events, you just naturally build soft skills. So that during my interview, and you guys know that every single interview is going to have a hypothetical or a behavioral aspect to it, and they're going to ask you, tell me about a time when. That is when your extracurriculars are going to really shine, because pretty much all of my answers had to do with hackathons or extracurricular clubs and organizations. Like these are all things that you do in your free time, and that is really how you're going to hone in on your soft skills. Thirdly, hackathons. You guys are already taking a big step by being here. Don't take them too seriously. We're all here to just have fun and network with sponsors. Ask them if there's any open roles, any internships, connect with recruiters. Hackathons are a really, really, really great way to not only build your own technical skills, but meet people from other universities. And I think the highlight of my undergrad was definitely the hackathons that I both attended and organized. And then next up we have, persistence. It's definitely something that has helped me in the past. And it was, I think, the key to where I am today, where it really helped me get my job at Google. And that is just applying every single year. Do not be intimidated by the job description, by the roles, by the titles. Like, just apply every year. The way that I got my job was I would apply to Google every year for co-op, and I would always get rejected. It's fine, like, it's Google. I would probably fail like the coding part of it, and then in my last year, a few months before I was supposed to graduate, a recruiter reached out to me over email, telling me about the TSD role. And I honestly thought the email was spam. I was like, yeah, right, okay. But then they reached back out and they're like, we have your resume and some of the skills that you have kind of match the skills that we need for this role. Are you interested in applying? So right off the bat, like, the resume that I kept sending to Google every summer, it kind of paid off because I was sending them an updated version of my resume every year. And eventually the skills kind of matched up. And, they matched me with this role. It was a new graduate role as well. And, the rest is just the interview process. So do not be intimidated by that. Apply every single year. I think companies and recruiters like to see that you're persistent, that you're not giving up, and keep in touch with your recruiters. Make sure that they know you. And like, I know it's not unheard of where if you apply for a role and the recruiter says that like, you didn't get the job, but let's try again in a few months. Definitely take that opportunity. Keep trying. Persistence is key. And then lastly, staying up to date, I think, is really important. This is something I wish I'd done a little bit more, but I'm starting to do it now because I think I have more time as compared to when I was an undergrad. But just like listening to podcasts or just watching certain TV shows that will help you stay up to date with the tech world. I know there's just like a fire hose of information that's being thrown at us every single day, but just finding things that you're interested in hearing about. The way that I do is I just follow like certain people on Twitter. I think just like reading tweets 5 minutes every day, you can learn a lot about what's happening in the tech world. So I'm not saying, you need to be at the cutting edge of technology, but just like kind of staying up to date on what's happening, I think it just kind of helps you understand what you like, what you dislike, and it gives you like a visual of the playing field or the world that you're going to be graduating in. And then to end this presentation off, here are a few things that I wish I'd done when I was in my undergraduate, starting off with specializing in a minor. Like I mentioned, I didn't do the honors or specialized version of the computer science degree at York. I wish I had. I wish I'd specialized in security. That's just my kind of like regret, because if you're going to spend the time and money to be in a institution, then you might as well kind of take advantage of it. So I know that it's not feasible for everyone. I know that like just a software engineering degree at York is like super jam-packed, but if you have the opportunity to even just like take electives outside of your main focus area, I think that will be really helpful. But what I mean by this is like, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but taking electives that have nothing to do with computer science, I wish I'd done more of that. I took like photography and I had the best time. So really, really urge you all to take courses that are just interesting and fun. It kind of helps you alleviate the pressure of computer science a little bit. But if you have the time and you have the availability to take enough courses to count as a minor, then definitely go for that as well. I also wish that I had participated in hackathons outside of my university. I think I only exclusively attended like the ones that were within York, but I wish I'd done more from other universities. I could have met so many more people. I could have networked more. I think I just didn't want to go out of my comfort zone. And I know hackathons are also, they take up a lot of time. So you kind of want to be a little bit picky about which hackathons you go to, but I do wish that I'd gone to some outside of my university. Another thing that I wish I'd done was I wish I'd started to apply for co-op earlier. I had initially started off in the Lausanne co-op program, but as you guys know, that there are some strict requirements for the co-op program. So then that kind of I didn't get co-op in the first summer that I tried. And then the second summer, I just applied externally. I didn't do it through the Lausanne co-op program. And I got the RBC job. I just wish I had just started off like that earlier. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They'll reject you. Like, it helps you kind of like take interviews. It helps you build rapport with the recruiters. And I wish I'd done it from like literally my first year onward. And lastly, I wish I had networked a little bit more during my co-op. Co-ops can be 4 months, 16 months. Mine was only 4 months, and I wish I'd kept in touch with my manager, with my coworkers, and just like attended more events. RBC was awesome. It was like one of the best summers I've had, but I do wish that's my fault that I didn't network. And I think that again, it takes a lot of, I think, like you have to be a little bit extroverted to network and put yourself out there and come out of your comfort zone. So that unfortunately was just not something that was my strong suit in undergrad, but I now do wish that I had done it. So these are just a few things that I'd wish I'd done. This is just my experience based on the past, I started university 7 years ago. But no one is perfect. No one's life is going to be ideally how you plan it. But I think just kind of taking things along the way, learning from your mistakes, helping everyone out, and just expanding your thinking. Computer science is honestly going to take over the world. Everyone needs tech. Tech runs everything. So we are at the forefront of it right now. And that puts us in a really unique position to basically leverage this unique world that we're living in. And I have no doubt that you all will end up in really great places. But I hope that this presentation kind of helped explain or kind of like introduce some new concepts that may not have been familiar otherwise. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, John, for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys would have right now.
Thank you so much, Saman. That was a really informative presentation. I'm sure everyone got a lot of information out of that. And sorry, I have to put my mask back on. So yeah, let's move on to the questions that were presented for the workshop. So the first question for you I have is, it says, I'm curious of the process of pushing a new product at Google, like how different roles such as technical solution developer, software engineers, and product managers work in tandem together to push a product out.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think I just learned about it maybe a couple months ago. But pushing a new product out, like a brand new product that the world has not seen before, is a huge feat to undertake, and it requires hundreds of people from all different teams. Obviously, it starts with your product manager. They have the idea of this new product. There's been a lot of research done into this product. They know exactly what the requirements are. So that requires a lot of human-computer interaction, a lot of surveying that goes on. Then they present it to the developers team. The developers work on it, they create it. But then after, I think the creation is when the longest process is the testing. QA testing is no joke. I think at any tech company, there are like rigorous tests that happen, making sure that nothing breaks. The documentation needs to be written before a product can be released to the world. There are almost always beta testers for this product. So there are certain companies, like let's say we're releasing a new social media product, and we'll let like Twitter test it out first, and then they will give us feedback. And then after the feedback is good, I would say after about a few months, like 6 months to a year, then it will become publicly available. And I think the whole process is really beautiful. It's harmonious. Everyone works together, but inevitably there are always things that go wrong. So that's kind of where the TSDs step in to mitigate that impact.
It's a really interesting question there. Thank you so much for whoever sent in that question, and thank you so much for answering that. So next question is actually kind of related to the first question. This might be a little bit sensitive, but they're wondering what Google does when a new product doesn't work as well as they thought they would like, such as Google Plus or Google Stadia. What happens to those products?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much like a joke, like a Google graveyard. All the Google products that came out and then they kind of failed. But I think that's the beauty of it. Like they gave it a shot and it failed, and it's unfortunate. But I think it takes a lot of privilege to be able to do that. Not all companies can afford to do that. I think there are very few companies that can afford to spend millions of dollars on a product and have it fail, and not, and it's like no skin off their back. You know, like it's not something that companies are like should naturally do. And I think there's very few companies like Google that can get away with it. So it is, you know, they have their jokes. You know, it's like Stadia just recently they closed that down. In that case, a lot of the Stadia developers moved on to other console or video game design or sorry teams outside of Google, or they transitioned into other developer roles within Google. But it's always sad. But I think there's a lot to learn when products fail, and that can happen without user feedback.
Yeah, I feel like it's inevitable process of trying to come up with a new product. It's not all of them are going to be successful, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. Let's move on to the next question. This one's directly to you. They were wondering if you applied to any software engineering roles, and if you have, how was the interviewing experience different in comparison to a technical solutions developer?
Yeah, great question. I did apply for several software engineering positions for a co-op, though. I'm going to be honest. I, I I find myself very lucky that I didn't really apply for full time other than Google, because I just wasn't at that stage in my life. So I can only speak on the co-op interview process. And there are a lot of similarities. There was in both, there were coding questions. There was behavioral. There's hypothetical. That is, I think, the core of pretty much any tech interview. The main differences, though, between the TSD role and, like, I would say a software engineering role, is that in the TSD interview they had us do a lot of code reading and code troubleshooting, which I struggled in. I'm not going to be like, I'm not even going to lie. It's one thing to design your own code and just write it with the interviewer, but like to read someone else's code and know it's broken and then have to fix it all in an interview, I think was really tough. So that, I think, was the main difference. They want to know if you can kind of recognize defects in code and then work to fix it. But everything else, I think, was pretty much the same behavioral hypothetical.
All right, thank you very much for that question, whoever sent it in, and thank you for that answer. Yeah, let's move on to something more personal. I'm sure you've experienced before, imposter syndrome. Do you have any tips on how to combat them and how to deal with them?
I will let you know once I overcome imposter syndrome. But honestly, it's so normal. I think that, like, some people are like, am I even good enough to have imposter syndrome? Like, I know that's like the new thought now. I think just understanding that, like, taking it one day at a time. And I think the biggest help for me was having a really good mentor within my team. They really, really helped me stand up on my own 2 feet. They basically taught me everything I needed to know. And I just had to strip away all my ego, any pride I had. I literally walked in on my first day and I admitted to knowing nothing. And I think that is when you do the most learning. Um, I acted as if I knew nothing, and I learned everything from scratch. Every company has their own way to do things, and before I knew it, it was 6 months, and people were reaching out to me for help. Like new Googlers were asking me for help, and I think just like somebody reaching out to you for help makes you feel like, wow, okay, like somebody is looking to me for assistance. So just stripping away your ego in the beginning and just starting fresh, and just understanding that where you are right now, everyone's been through it. So you kind of have to go through that to become more senior or more advanced.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. You have to be honest with yourself and knowing what you don't and what you don't know, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so next question. I thought this was a really interesting question. At your time at York University in your computer science program, did you anything that or experienced anything that you felt short at the program, and do you have any tips for current computer science students on combating them?
So I did start off in software engineering. I did 4 years of software engineering before transferring into the computer science program. I'm happy to speak on that. Or if somebody is also going through that same decision and they want to discuss it, I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn if you kind of want to bounce some ideas off me. But looking back, I wish I had made that jump earlier, just because I think that the computer science program at York allowed for more flexibility. But to answer the question, were there any shortcomings of the program? Um, I just feel like there were a lot of requirements, especially in the co-op program. The ECS GPA, that thing was the bane of my existence throughout all 5 years. Um, ECS courses are hard. Like every comp sci course is hard. I just feel like I wish I had a little bit more leeway with my ECS courses, but then now I'm looking back and I'm like, it makes sense. Like they want a threshold that you don't want to dip below when it comes to comp sci courses. But I think we're really lucky. Like York, I think is a really great place to have graduated from. The professors are pretty cool. The courses I think were really interesting, but I just wish that I had minored in security or had taken more security courses. And I think that just goes to the fact that we are required to take so many courses that it kind of leaves you little room to take courses that you actually want.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a fair enough question. Fair enough answer. Thank you for that. Yeah, so the next question I have for you is, what other fields do you see cloud computing breaking into that currently is in your opinion?
I'm trying to think of something that cloud has not currently broken into.
I'm sure
I
it's
honestly can't.
easy to find a list for that one, right?
Yeah, like I honestly don't know of anything that could not be enhanced or improved with cloud. I think that medical advancements will become tenfold with cloud interference. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of companies have hesitations of transferring to cloud just because it's like the information is not with them. It's not in their data centers. It's not in their hardware. But I think as soon as users or businesses kind of get over that fear, they're going to realize that their businesses will become exponentially more advanced. And I think it's really like those traditional businesses that are a little bit more hesitant, which makes complete sense. Like banking industry has a lot of requirements. Like they have certain requirements that their data needs to be in, let's say, mainland US or mainland China, for example. So there's a lot of red tape that banks have to go through. So I think that pretty much cloud will touch everything in the future in 5-10 years. And the concept of like a hard drive, I think, will no longer exist in laptops. Every single thing will be on the cloud, and we will not be restrained anymore by stuff like bandwidth, RAM, compute capabilities. Everything will become so flexible going forward.
Yeah, that's a really good insight on the future of the cloud computing. Yeah, I can totally see that coming. Yeah, I think we have room for one more question before we have to close off the workshop. Do you have any general tips for York University students who want to make it into big tech jobs like yourself?
I would say definitely, aside from the things that I did mention in this presentation, just please don't ever be afraid to apply. Even if the role is in a different country, in a different city, these big tech companies, they really want you. They will pay for everything. I think it's just showing that passion and also the persistence to keep applying. A lot of my friends have applied for big tech, and the recruiter said, reach back out in a couple of months, and they did. And it takes about a few tries. So definitely do not be, disheartened by that. And I think that a lot of companies that we think are kind of like medium size are becoming really big now. So definitely don't underestimate those as well. I think you're going to have a lot more fun in those companies. You're going to have a lot more say in like startups, let's say. And just like overall tips, I think is that as as sad as this sounds, a formal education is no longer a huge deciding factor when it comes to these jobs. Like it sucks that we try so hard to get a good GPA and to pass our courses. Like you need that degree at the end of the day. But I think just like don't focus too much on your GPA. Use that extra time if you have a need to do fun courses or fun side projects on like Udemy, for example. And just don't feel like every single minute of your time needs to be productive or tech related. They really want someone who's well rounded, who knows about all aspects, not just tech. So I think that everyone has a really unique perspective to bring. and knowing what you bring and honing that and amplifying that will take you really far in the interview process.
Sounds really amazing, Saman. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this right now and then who will be watching the recordings, so they're gonna be really feel humbled by you, just being really down to earth and giving them personal advice such as like these. We really appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for having me. I had a really great time, and this is a huge privilege for me to be presenting at a hackathon. So thanks again for having me. I'm happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn if you have any questions about anything that I've spoken about. I'm happy to provide my insight, whatever it's worth. But I had a really great time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again for coming over. And we can't wait to have you over again next time on a different workshop in the future. Yeah, and for anyone who has a question to Saman directly, yeah, so please go on to the LinkedIn profile currently floating on the bottom of the screen right now. Thank you everyone again for joining our workshop today. Please stay tuned for our next workshop happening in about 10 minutes at 6 p.m. That is hacking into your first internship hosted by Women in Science and Engineering Club at York University. Thank you, Saman, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you again for coming in.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.